Very, very warm welcome to St Peter Mancroft Church. My name's Edward Carter, I'm the vicar here. Every Wednesday at 1 o'clock we have just a very short reflection, which I'm going to give now, just share a few thoughts. But if you're here enjoying visiting the church, do carry on looking around, that's absolutely fine. If you want to listen into my reflection, that's lovely. And also welcome to any joining us on the live stream, or perhaps watching this later on YouTube. Well, as I speak today, which is the 12th of August, later on there's going to be here in this country a solar eclipse. Just after 7 o'clock in the evening is when it's at its strongest. It'll be a partial solar eclipse. Perhaps you've read about this or heard about it across pretty much all of the United Kingdom, the British Isles. And I think here in Norwich, where I'm speaking from in Norfolk, the moon will cover the sun just over 90%, even more if you were down in Cornwall in the southwest. But over 90%, that's a lot of the sun that will be blocked out by the moon. And a solar eclipse is an unusual occurrence, a rare event, we might say. Certainly a total solar eclipse, that's when the moon completely blocks out the sun. They don't happen very often at all. In fact, the next one, just in case you were planning ahead a bit, the next one that will be a total solar eclipse visible from mainland Britain isn't due until the 23rd of September 2090. So I don't think, some of us anyway, may not be around in 2090. That's many years to wait. There was one in 1999. In fact, on the 11th of August, so this time of year, a good number of years ago, 1999. And bits of Cornwall had a total solar eclipse, and also bits of Northern Europe. And it just so happened that I was on holiday back in 1999, in August, in France, in Normandy, which was the perfect place to watch the eclipse. We went as a family on holiday, and we didn't plan this at all. We didn't really realise it was going to happen. But it did happen, and we stopped by the side of the road. We were driving, I think, back to the port for the ferry, but we stopped by the side of the road, and there were people handing out the special sunglasses you have to wear, and we saw this total solar eclipse, which I will never forget. I'm quite happy that I won't be around in 2090, because I saw it back in 1999. And it was a very strange sensation, because it was, I think, probably in the middle of the day, a lovely bright sunny day as well, no clouds, which may have been true in some parts of the world when that eclipse was happening, but there were no clouds, and of course it gradually got darker and darker, and it didn't get pitch black, but it was very, very subdued light. And the birds, everyone says this, but the birds were the ones who noticed it instantly, and they all started stopping their singing, roosting in the trees. And a few minutes of what should have been bright sunlight, a lovely August day, all those years ago, became, to all effects and purposes, a moment of darkness. And it got much colder as well, of course, a very strong physical change. And I've been reflecting on some of this again, and I think the first thing is that I've been reminded just how small I am in the grand scheme of things. Some years ago I created a string which I laid all the way down the middle of the church here where I'm speaking from. And on the string I put little beads representing the sun at one end, a little yellow bead for the sun, and then all the different planets. I can't remember the right order they come in, but Mercury and Venus and Earth, of course, and Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all the planets. And they were all tiny little beads on this piece of string right down the church. To scale, they had to be tiny, tiny beads, because actually in the grand scheme of things, all the planets, even the big ones like Saturn and Jupiter, are tiny. And the moon around the Earth, very important, the moon is, but a tiny, tiny speck, barely visible on this scheme that I created to show, I think, to some visiting children. And I remember very vividly asking one of the children, look, here's the sun, here are the planets, all the way down the length of the church. where do you think the nearest next star might be? Because the galaxy is full of stars, of course. Where would the nearest star be if it was another little bead? And hands went up, and someone said, maybe all the way over in the Forum, which is the next building along, which I can see as I look out of the west doors. Maybe it's there. Or someone else said, maybe it's a mile away. And the answer, and then a child put his hand up and said, Legoland. That's where the next star is. And you know what? He was right, because the nearest star on that scale would have been down in Windsor, it is, where Legoland is in this country, which is a long way away, more than 100 miles away. A tiny bead, 100 miles away. That's what it's like, the stars. We live in an extraordinary universe. And it's amazing, really, that eclipses happen as often as they do, given all these vast spaces and distances. It's extraordinary. Even more extraordinary, as I reflected a bit more on this, is the fact that we know there will be an eclipse today. If we'd lived 200 years ago, we wouldn't have known at all what was going to happen. But we know now, we're told, when the eclipse will happen, and we're excited about it. And we prepare our special glasses. Don't watch it without those. We know, for example, that there will be a total solar eclipse next year in August in Egypt, on the 2nd of August. We know exactly when it's going to happen. We know that in another year after that, in 2028, on the 22nd of July, there'll be a total solar eclipse in Australia and New Zealand. We know all these things because scientists have worked out the way in which the stars, the moon, the earth, all move around. We know that roughly every 18 months there will be another total solar eclipse, and lots of other partial eclipses as well. And it's amazing that we know these things, but I think it means we need to be people filled with wisdom as well as just knowledge. We need to remember that lots of knowledge, lots of the ability to do clever things, as in the modern world, isn't the path to happiness on its own. We need the wisdom as well that comes with remembering how small we are in the grand scheme of things. Well, I'm a clergyman, I'm the vicar here at this church, and I'm always amazed that there are one or two places in the scriptures where eclipses, or what sounds like an eclipse, is actually mentioned as part of the biblical story. Some of the prophets, Amos and Joel particularly, they speak of a darkening of the land. And they're speaking really about the judgment of God towards the human race, towards human foolishness, even the power of evil. God's response and judgment is somehow reflected in a very physical, tangible way. And then above all else for Christians, at the crucifixion of Jesus, the moment when Jesus was on the cross and when he died, it's described that a great darkness covered the whole land, a moment of great significance for all of creation. A moment of death, yes, but actually for Christians, a moment also of new beginnings, of a new creation on the third day, Easter Day. So again, as I've reflected on all of this, I suppose I've seen again how important it is to remember that everything is somehow bound up with God. For me, I believe that strongly. Everything is under God's protection, under God's providence, within God's purposes. And one last thing I think I've found and felt to say. Two different emotions arise within me. One is I feel completely insignificant, tiny. I'm the tiniest speck on the tiny little bead that is the earth, where the nearest star is in Legoland. How insignificant am I? I'm so small. I do feel that. But I also feel something else. I also feel, in a strange kind of way, not an egoistic way, I feel significant in that I am part of God's creation. I am part of God's purposes. I feel, in the end, loved by God, deeply loved by God. And so, alongside the insignificance comes a deep significance as well, of being alive and receiving that gift of life well. So perhaps if you're going to watch the eclipse later today, or maybe watch it later on television or something like that, maybe as you watch it again, you'll be reminded of some of those things as well. The significance of being alive, a very small part of a beautiful and wonderful creation. Thank you very much for listening to my short reflection today. Thank you for being here in the church, and blessings for today and for the coming days as well. And next Wednesday there'll be another reflection given by one of my colleagues here. Thank you again.